Right, good morning, everybody. On today's webinar, you have myself, Mark Churley from App Technology, and we also have Derek Steele and Michelle Laverick from Droplet. Over the next half an hour, what we'll be doing is looking at application challenges you might be facing with Windows 11, but also with Cyber Essentials Plus. So, for example, with Windows 11, you may be looking at application compatibility challenges, some of the challenges in terms of moving to modern management platforms like Intune, as well as traditional challenges of application ownership and lifecycle management. Further to this, with CE+, you may also be looking at ensuring that you have robust processes in place to manage the update and removal of applications in your estate. Specifically for Cyber Essentials Plus, there are a number of challenges that you are going to have to meet if you are looking to be compliant. Your applications need to be licensed and supported. An application must be removed from your estate when it is no longer supported, and this is an area where Droplet may be able to assist. Automatic updates must be turned on where possible, and applications must be updated within 14 days of an update being released. Now, it's the third bullet point on this one that I always find interesting, which is if a patch is released from a vendor without security or vulnerability classifications, even if it is negligible, you need to treat it as a critical application and get that patch within 14 days. So the hurdles to meeting that CE compliance are quite high in terms of managing these updates across your estate. We touched on unsupported applications very briefly on the last slide. And what we frequently find is that organizations can end up carrying a level of technical debt in their application estate. This can range from business critical applications running on an XP desktop through to ancient applications supporting critical manufacturing or medical machinery in an organization. And these can exist for many, many reasons. There may be no upgrade path available for an application that's supporting a piece of machinery. It may be hugely costly to redevelop a bespoke application in your environment. There may be no business benefit to a costly third-party upgrade, or you might find you've just simply got an application that's due to be decommissioned, but you need to run it securely in your state for a number of months or years. And if you're doing so, that could be a barrier to getting to Windows 11 or your C+ compliance. And again, this is an area where Droplet and using a Droplet container may be of significant benefit to your organization. So what does great look like for managing your applications? So for your simple, common off-the-shelf applications, often referred to as COTS applications, you should be looking at things like Windows Auto Patch. Automatic updates for applications where possible. So we've talked about already, so things like Chrome are great candidates for this. Or looking at patch management tools for managing some of these COTS applications. And there's tools out there like Patch My PC, which can be great in this space. For your standard applications, at App Technology, we can help you with managing your 14-day release cycles by tracking vendor releases for your application estate, potentially providing cradle-to-grave lifecycle management for your applications, so ensuring that your applications are supported, that they have owners in your estate that understand them and test them, that they're licensed, and specifically that they're removed when they're no longer in use. We can also help by monitoring your estate for unmanaged applications, often referred to as skunkware, so applications that shouldn't be in your estate and that may pose a security or a CE risk, as well as options for application packaging and migrating your applications from your current platform, potentially SCCM, onto a modern management platform like Intune. We've then got complex and legacy applications. Now, Droplet again can help in this space by providing support for critical, unsupported client-server applications and ensuring that they are supported and CE+ compliant. What I'll do now is I'm going to hand over to Derek Steele to talk through the Droplet Never Trust model and how that can help you with your C+ compliancy for your application estate.
Thanks very much, Mark. So Droplet is a software based on Linux, based on containerization. What we do is we can run any x86 application inside our software, inside our container, which we call a never trust container. We go beyond, we feel we go beyond zero trust based on some of the security tools that we've added to our software, helping prevent threat actors from attacking vulnerable applications, as Mark highlighted, which are no longer supported, maybe written 20 years ago for an OT technology, or there simply is no upgrade path. And that could be preventing you from achieving your cyber essentials. So the way Droplet helps that particular scenario is we can work on any operating system. So we support Windows, Mac OS, Chrome OS, Linux, and any cloud platform. So irrespective of where your target platform is and where you want to be and where you are now, we can take those applications, as long as it's x86, we can wrap them inside our secure never trust bubble, and we can then migrate them to the platform of choice, whether it's an endpoint device, an on-premise server, a cloud, or indeed on the edge. And the way our security tools work to help overcome those security challenges are, once we create our container, we create an isolation layer between our container and the operating system of the device that you choose to install us on. That helps overcome the challenge of an unsupported application. The new Cyber Essentials state that unsupported software must be removed or isolated away from the network. And we enable that through our Never Trust container. We go further than that as well, in that we then encrypt all the traffic between our Droplet client endpoint device and the Droplet server where the applications sit. So security is pretty much at the heart of everything we do. We deliver applications to any platform, but we do it in a very unique, never trust security-based focus. And finally, the other thing that we also do from a security perspective, BYOD has now been added to Cyber Essentials. Wasn't there this time last year. It's now been added. We lock down end users, applications, and devices by removing privileged access from the end user's admin access. The only functionality that an end user has in a Droplet world is they can only launch an application. They can't add an application, they can't modify an application, and they can't delete an application. So that's a very good solution for those contractors or students or remote workers who you want to enable remote access on their own device. So that is Droplet as a high-level overview. As I say, if there was any questions at the end, feel free to ask. What I'm going to do now is pass back to Mark and Michelle. Mark, you're on mute.
Thank you. I will now hand over to Michelle. And what Michelle will do is be able to then give a physical demonstration of the product and talk through some of that or demonstrate through some of that functionality that Derek and I have been talking about.
So let me start with the end user experience first and what this feels like from, your ordinary users. Here's a Windows 11 based system, and we've got the Droplet client already pre-installed, which just sits in the system tray out of the way of the user's line of sight. We do have a UI that backs the container, but for the most part, end users don't actually interact with this UI at all. It just sits in the system tray waiting for the end user to run their application. And we can run legacy applications like this really old version of Microsoft Office, which is now 20 years old and more, alongside modern applications with the same level of performance, same level of integration. So if I just show you what a modern application looks like, you can see it loads up very, very quickly. So we're a combination of different tools, really, that really allows us to solve all sorts of issues in the environment, such as difficult to deploy modern applications. We're specifically focusing here on Windows 11. We've had in the last 2 weeks 2 engagements where customers have got pre-packaged apps which they've used to deploy to Windows 10. And one of those customers, 130 applications. and these prepackaged apps just won't deploy to Windows 11 at all. And they're looking at repackaging those 130 applications all over again just to make them run on Windows 11. There's absolutely no need to do that with Droplet. They could preserve their application estate and deliver them through a Droplet container instead. Yeah. It's fair to say that when we're dealing with legacy applications, stuff that's really old, it's rarely something like Microsoft Office. So we're very, very experienced with dealing with applications that are specific to a particular industry, whether that's finance, whether that's automotive or aerospace. Yeah. And often those applications are not just specific to a particular market vertical, they're specific to that particular company. So we go very, very deep when it comes to legacy. We can deal with DOS applications, for example, and we even had a project a couple of years ago to deal with OS2 Warp. Yeah. For modern applications, they work just as well, as you've seen already. Sometimes these modern applications are the ones that come with a very big disk footprint. They're 4 or 5 gig. So therefore deploying them to the endpoint is a bit of a challenge. Or they require extensive post configuration. What I sometimes say is people in white coats around the application to make it live. But aside from that, often what we find is customers can get their application to run in Windows 10 or Windows 11, but there's a big anxiety about a Windows update coming along and slamming that application on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning. And you've heard Mark talk about the new challenges, and the window that you're allowed to run unpatched is getting smaller and smaller. Mark mentioned 14 days or less. And the days of us being able to test those patches and those updates well in advance of making them available to end users is getting smaller and smaller, because obviously the people who develop the vulnerabilities, the hackers, are getting more and more efficient at putting stuff out there in an extremely quick and rapid way, which makes it harder for us to react. Yeah. Another example of using Droplet at this level is to support different web browsers. Yeah. So in this particular example, I'm running 2 different web browsers, obviously both legacy. Yeah, I've got container running Windows Internet Explorer version 11, and also I've got a container that's running IE6. And this is something that comes up very frequently if we're dealing with legacy applications. Some of the plugins that your legacy applications might have used in the past, like Silverlight, Adobe, or some sort of Oracle plugin, may not be compatible with the very latest version of Windows 11. So we have to have the ability to run things almost at any kind of release. And of course, these web-based applications were probably developed back in the day of 2008 or 2012. So they have dependencies reaching back into legacy servers as well. So the main thing I wanted to get across with this front-end demo is showing you how seamless we are to the end user. The user really has no idea that it's Droplet that's driving this application. They just double-click a shortcut on their desktop and they get their application. Yeah, they don't need to know that Droplet is there. And of course, the icon that I'm double-clicking here with the Droplet logo can be changed to be the correct logo for the application. In fact, one of the reasons I leave the Droplet logo in place in my demos is so people can see that it's actually running in Droplet. Because unless you're particularly eagle-eyed, you might not even notice that Droplet is running this system. So the next thing I want to do is just turn to and show you what's going on in the background and how this is all working. So my Droplet environment is actually running on premises on a vSphere environment. We're not locked to any virtualization layer or cloud provider. We work with Hyper-V, Nutanix, vSphere, and we also work with Azure and AWS. So a Droplet environment can live anywhere. We even have a physical deployment that we use specifically for robo solutions. So if you've got branch offices of just 5, 10, 15, 20 people, where server infrastructure is just not economic, and where the links back to the corporate data center are unreliable or there's insufficient bandwidth, we can drop into that robo location a Droplet physical appliance, just a high-end PC, to be honest with you, to service the needs of those particular users. So just so you know what we've got running here, I've got my demo server appliance, running in the environment here, and it won't be of any surprise to you that that Droplet server appliance is actually built around Linux. When me and my colleague Barry speak to the C-suite, we like to say that we're a combination of open source and secret source. So the open source is the Linux kernel, and the secret source is the IP that we've been developing and improving over the last 5 or 6 years. Running inside that appliance, I've got a number of different containers. This is our web-based interface that's used to manage the Droplet server currently. And this particular container was the one that I was using to deliver the legacy Word application. So in Windows 11, when I double-click the Word icon, essentially what's happening is the application is being remotely displayed across the network onto the user's endpoint. So that means that the client can be very, very thin indeed. It's less than 100 meg to deploy the Droplet client. Our containers, this one that's delivering the legacy application and this one that's delivering the modern application, are all multi-session capable. That means more than one user can connect to the container and get their application. So unlike conventional VDI, where every user got their own desktop, consuming chunks of memory, CPU, and disk, it's more of a shared model when it comes to Droplet containers, where multiple containers can support multiple users. That means we can scale up the solution by giving the container more memory and CPU in terms of its resources, but we can also scale out the solution as well. Droplet ships with its own load balancing technology. I've got 2 load balancers here in a clustered pair, and those load balancers can distribute the load across multiple DSAs. So whatever your concurrency needs are, hundreds, potentially thousands, all we do is keep on adding more appliances until we get to the point that your concurrency can be met. Obviously, the level of concurrency varies from one application to another. A simple web application will give you very large concurrency values for a single appliance, whereas applications that take up 1 gig, 2 gig, 3 gig worth of memory, you'll get lower concurrency rates. The last thing I want to mention isn't really EUC focused, but I'm going to mention it anyway, just so you're aware of what Droplet can do. The Droplet appliance isn't just an EUC solution. It's a multi-purpose solution that can deal with many, many different scenarios. So another common scenario that we have is customers wanting to run legacy servers and have them protected by Droplet. So here I've got a legacy 2003 and a legacy 2008 based system. So we're equally capable of not just delivering the application, the end user's app, we're also equally capable of delivering the web servers and the other infrastructure that they need. So we're not just an EUC company, we also protect servers. See us as a bubble that layers a layer of security around legacy and modern applications and legacy servers as well. All that's needed is a very thin, narrow client, which creates a secure connection to our service, our server, and then allows you to gain access to that application. If a pen tester came along and was looking for the legacy applications installed here, they simply wouldn't be there. All they would see is a Droplet client. And because we're dealing with this sort of multi-session capability, it's very easy to deploy applications to large numbers of users in a short period of time, whether that's a legacy application or whether you're dealing with a modern application. So that's Droplet in a nutshell, a bubble of security around your legacy and modern applications, and a very thin, light client that's used to access that application remotely. I'm going to hand back to Mark and Co to do our roundups, and if there are any questions, I'd happily take those. Back to you, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Right, let me reshare my screen. So yeah, as Michelle's said, and we've gone through this, so we've walked through the capabilities of Droplet and how that might fit in as part of meeting your Windows 11 and your CE Plus challenges. As Derek and I have said, obviously, if there's any questions, at the end of this webinar, we will be sending out to you the slides. We're also going to be recording this if there's anyone that you want to share that with internally, but please feel free to reach out to understand how we can help with any specific challenges you might have in your organization. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found this webinar useful. We've tried to keep it short and sweet because we're conscious of people's time. As I've just discussed, we'll be sending out a summary after the webinar, and I'm happy to hear from any questions. The only final thing I wanted to leave you with is our next webinar is going to be on Wednesday, October 30th, and that will be doing a further deep dive into how a state actor attack on some UK national energy infrastructure was prevented through the use of droplets. So a really security focused deep dive into how this can prevent security issues in a very real world example. Once again, thank you for your time today. What I will now do is close off the webinar, and yes, thank you ever so much.